Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the program today. I'm Amarachi Ubani, coming up within the hour. The International Red Cross describes the situation in Gaza as worse than hell following Israeli offensive in the enclave. It comes as the United States defends its own humanitarian efforts in Gaza. Plus, Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, criticizes the U.S. proposal for new nuclear agreement. Let's begin the world today. President of the International Red Cross, Mariana Spoljak, has told the BBC Gaza has become worse than hell on earth. She was speaking in an interview on the broadcaster at the ICRC headquarters in Geneva. She says humanity is failing and that states are not doing enough to end the war, end the suffering of the Palestinians, and release the Israeli hostages. Palestinians, she says, have been stripped of human dignity. International humanitarian law is being hollowed out, and what is happening in Gaza, she says, surpasses any acceptable legal, moral, and humane standards. The ICRC is an international organization that operates in war zones. It has over 300 staff in Gaza, many of whom are Palestinians. Meanwhile, spokesperson for the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate independent investigation into the deaths and injuries of Palestinians seeking humanitarian aid in Gaza, describing the situation as unacceptable. Speaking to journalists on Monday in New York, Stefan Dujarric says it's unacceptable that Palestinians are risking their lives for food. Israel has a clear obligation under international humanitarian law to facilitate aid, and the unimpeded entry of assistance at scale must be restored. Dujarric says dozens were reportedly killed or injured near distribution centers in Rafah and Deir al-Balah while attempting to access essential supplies. He also highlighted continued attacks on health facilities, including Nur al-Sha'ab Dialysis Center in North Gaza, which was reportedly struck.
The Secretary General calls for an immediate and independent investigation into these events and for perpetrators to be held accountable. Israel has a clear obligation under international humanitarian law to agree to and facilitate aid, humanitarian aid, the unimpeded entry of assistance at scale to meet the enormous needs of the people in Gaza must be restored immediately. And turning to the situation on the ground, I can tell you that our humanitarian colleagues there from the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that in the last 2 days, partners reported scores of people killed and injured, apparently while gathering to receive supplies near the militarized distribution centers in Rafah and Deir al-Balah. Attacks against health facilities have also continued. Yesterday, in North Gaza, the Nur al-Kabi Center for Dialysis was reportedly hit. The Ministry of Health in Gaza tells us that more than 40% of dialysis patients in Gaza have died since the escalation of hostilities in October 2023. This is because the centers were either struck or they are now unreachable. As hostilities continue, people have once again been forced to flee. On Saturday, Israeli authorities issued another displacement order in Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balah. This has affected about 100,000 people living in more than 200 displacement sites. 2 primary health care centers and 5 medical points are within the displacement area, while these 3 hospitals and 3 field hospitals and 7 primary health care centers and 20 medical points are located within 1,000 meters of it.
And from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he insists Israel is making measured progress to prevent or minimize the deaths of soldiers in Gaza. Unfortunately, he says there are no free wars, and the price you pay, the price the people of Israel pay, is heavy, sometimes seems unbearable. The Israeli military said 3 of its soldiers were killed in northern Gaza in what appeared to be the deadliest attack on Israeli forces since it ended a ceasefire with Hamas in March. The Israeli military said the 3 soldiers, all in their early 20s, fell during combat on Monday without providing details. Israeli media reported that they were killed in an explosion in the Jabalia area. Israel ended the ceasefire after Hamas refused to change the agreement to release more hostages sooner. Israeli strikes have had impacts on several in Gaza. It's killed thousands of Palestinians since then, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Israel imposed a complete blockade on food and other imports for 2.5 months, leading to warnings of famine before the restrictions were loosened in May. Also touting its efforts in Gaza is the United States. The State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce defended U.S. humanitarian aid efforts in Gaza during a press briefing in Washington on Monday, attributing much of the outrage over a recent reported deadly strike on an aid distribution site to what she called the normalized hatred of Jews. Addressing journalists, Bruce said the Israeli Defense Forces are actively investigating reports that 27 people were killed at the distribution site. But highlighting the complex and dangerous nature of aid delivery, Bruce emphasized its importance, announcing that additional distributions, including to northern Gaza, are being planned.
I think we are now at 7 million meals distributed to date. Now, obviously, we would like perfection. There is no perfection under any circumstance. We would like it to be even more, and they are going to be increasing, I believe, their sites, 4 more distribution sites that will include northern Gaza as well. I would argue that it would be naive to suggest that the Jew hatred that, whether it's through social media, through fake news, through the rhetoric regarding Israel, through the years, has not developed or perpetuated anti-Semitism. It's naive or mistaken. I'll give you that word. I think it's obvious that these things don't happen in a vacuum, and that the rhetoric against Jews for 2,000 years has been nonstop and quite blunt. And it hasn't stopped. And the way the world has responded recently in the 21st century to the attack on Jews, including what's been going on at American universities, has been obscene. The focus on Israel, the nature of who's been attacking in that region, the responsibility of Iran, that we get food in, that's not good enough. What happens with Israelis and what they say is not good enough. What the president said, I'll reiterate here, is that we have got to move past all of this. There has to be new ideas. We have to end this circle, and that's what we're doing here. So when we think about this, I think our ambassador to Israel, has every right and will speak his mind, as he is the ambassador to that important state that is constantly under attack, and it is a reasonable understanding of what has affected people worldwide, which is a rhetoric that has normalized the hatred of Jews and in some cases romanticized it. And we have to stand up against it, and we will, but I'm not going to condemn him for that. I don't think any of us are going to be protesting 7 million meals being distributed.
Well, U.S. markets are slightly opening up today in the opening hours after Donald Trump signed an order doubling his steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%. The U.S. president says the measures are intended to secure the future of the American steel industry. The UK is temporarily exempted from the increase, but a levy remains at 25%. London says it's working at pace to implement a trade deal it signed with Washington last month. We are, however, hearing that Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum will be announcing new measures in response to higher U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs if no agreement is reached. She says the tariffs are unfair and Mexico's response will not be an eye for an eye, but the measures will be announced next week, as said. In the meantime, the White House has confirmed that the U.S. Trade Representative's office sent letters to trade partners saying that they had until today to provide their best offer on a trade framework. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called the letters a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up, as President Trump in April restricted most of his country-by-country tariffs to a baseline 10%, so the negotiations could cover over the course of 90 days. Leavitt said that Trump expects good deals, and we're back on track for that.
USTR sent this letter to all of our trading partners just to give them a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. And they are in talks. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick are in talks with many of our key trading partners around the globe. As you know, Brian, I know the Wall Street Journal has covered this quite heavily. And they continue to be engaged in those discussions. And this letter was simply to remind these countries that the deadline is approaching and the president expects good deals. And we are on track for that, I will emphasize as well. Each country has unique advantages, unique challenges to it based on their markets and what they export to us and what we export to them. And so that's why the president smartly advised his trade team to engage in tailor-made deal making. And we saw that with the United Kingdom, and we will see that with other countries as well. They need to cut deals with the United States of America. The tariff agenda of this president, he believes very strongly in it. And as you've all seen, he's unafraid to use tariffs to protect our industries and protect our workers. But he wants to see these tailor-made deals be signed. And I will tell you, of course, I never want to be the one negotiating with the press about these internal discussions and deliberations. But our team, who is deeply involved in this, sees these deals moving in the right direction. In fact, Ambassador Greer is in Paris right now, meeting with many of our trading partners. The plan is for the announcement of these deals to be made very, very soon, yes. The president will be signing that executive order today, and steel and aluminum tariffs will be going to 50%, yes.
Developing right now, European and United States trade negotiators are meeting in Paris to negotiate settlement of a tense tariff spat with global economic ramifications between two global economic powerhouses. The European Union's top trade negotiator, Maros Sefcovic, met today with his American counterpart, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, on the sidelines of a meeting of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Brussels and Washington are unlikely to reach a substantive trade agreement. The issues dividing them are too difficult to resolve quickly. U.S. President Donald Trump regularly fumes about America's persistent trade deficit with the European Union, which was a record $116 billion last year. Trump blames the gap between what the U.S. sells and what it buys from Europe on unfair trade practices, and often singles out for criticism the EU's 10% tax on imported cars. Well, back in America, Elon Musk has hit out at President Donald Trump's signature tax and spending bill, describing it as a disgusting abomination. In a widening rift between the two, the tech billionaire posted on X that the bill would add to the U.S. budget deficit and saddle Americans with crushing debt. The debt, which includes huge tax breaks and more defense spending, was passed by the House of Representatives last month and is now being considered by senators. The bill has the backing of President Donald Trump and will be the legislative linchpin of his second-term agenda if it passes Congress. Musk said on X, "Shame on those who voted for it," hinted that he may try to unseat the politicians responsible at next year's midterm elections. The comments mark his first public disagreement with Trump since leaving government, after having previously called the plan disappointing. Let's begin our Washington correspondent Maria Bird to shed some light on this. Maria, let's begin with Elon Musk's comment on the so-called big, beautiful bill of President Trump. I guess that now that he's left government, we can really know what he thinks of the administration.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. This is quite, I don't think surprising. I think that people expected that there would be some backlash after he departed, even though it was expected that he would depart in late May. I think the note that was placed on X, I don't know if people expected that, but as you look at what's been going with Tesla, some of his economic challenges as a result of what many people believe of him joining the administration in Washington, that he was going to somehow have to separate himself from the administration as he went back to manage his companies.
Yeah, and we'll be hearing more from Elon Musk, I'm sure, in the coming days. But where are we now concerning this increase on steel and aluminum?
Yes, this increase that went into effect at midnight on Wednesday, the doubling to 50%, was something that many Americans expected, knew would likely happen. But it's going to not only have an impact on businesses, but on the consumers. Things like, your refrigerators, your all aluminum appliances, steel that's used for just simple things like canned goods. It's all going to have a hike in prices, which will have a very heavy impact on the U.S. But if you think about the way in which steel and aluminum are used within the U.S. And so I think people are concerned about what this is going to mean. This is something that was impending. And so as we also heard a little bit earlier, is that the government has a deadline as to when trade partners are going to come to the table. And so whether or not we've seen it before, where there have been U-turns, there have been pauses on tariffs, we could see that. But the challenging part is that we will see an immediate impact on pricing and probably last a little bit longer, even if they're able to rectify and make a U-turn on these steel and aluminum tariffs.
So, bottom line, consumers will bear the brunt of this increase. Markets, we understand, opened up today. What factors may have helped drive this?
Well, we saw some positive things in the market yesterday. We're seeing that there was not as much of an economic impact, and we still saw some growth in many companies across the board. But today, I think we're going to see some great fluctuation up and down. It depends on how investors are looking at these tariffs, how they impact. We traditionally have seen that tariffs have brought the market down, but again, this is going to likely be what we've seen over the past few weeks, a seesawing day on the markets.
Mexico, just before we came on the air, announced it will be announcing new tariff measures next week. Speaking of those trade tariffs, there are now baseline 10% across many countries. The UK, we understand, is also discussing a response. Sir Keir Starmer is discussing with his cabinet members. What have been gains to these tariffs being imposed on other countries for the US and US companies?
Well, I think there's going to be obviously the external factors. We know that U.S. companies are going to not only be impacted by the tariffs that we put in place here in the United States, but also those countries that are going to put tariffs on us as well. And so it'll be a double-edged sword for many companies. But the hope, obviously, is that people are coming to the table. You've mentioned Mexico, you've mentioned the EU, which is happening today. We know there's expectation that China will come to the table, and the president will meet with China later this week into the weekend, which is obviously the big piece, right? China is a huge trade partner for the US. And so I think as these deadlines approach, and as we get to a place where we're going to see some of these negotiations, the real question now, are they going to be temporary negotiations, or are these going to be long-standing negotiations that are going to be able to put some things in place that will be able to stabilize the US economy?
And I see that American reporters are, speculating about the president speaking about the tariffs today. What can you tell us about this?
Well, we're expecting that he will definitely come out and obviously have the focus on America first, which has continued to be his messaging. He will try to corral the American people to know that what he's doing is a positive light, and obviously also showing the strong arm, which he continues to use as a way in which to bring countries to the table to discuss tariffs. So this is going to be, again, him focusing on why what his strategy is going to be key and critical, and he potentially could put into play the discussions with the EU and probably announcing if they are able to secure a date and time for China and the US to come together to discuss trade.
A lot of discussions going on between the between the US, beg your pardon, and its partners. Maria, thanks again.
Thank you.
We're off on a short break now. On the World Today, still ahead. Ukraine releases footage it claims shows its attack on the Crimea Bridge on Tuesday. Though Russia claims the bridge is perfectly fine. Welcome back. Still watching The World Today. Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has criticized the U.S. proposal for a new nuclear agreement. reiterating that it will not stop enriching uranium. Iranian negotiators are set to respond in the coming days to what the White House has called a detailed and acceptable plan presented at talks last Saturday. U.S. reports say it proposes that Iran halt all production of enriched uranium, which can be used to make reactor fuel, but also nuclear weapons, and instead rely on a regional consortium for supplies. Now, as Supreme Leader, Khamenei has final say on the country's most important issues, including a potential nuclear deal. He remarked in a speech marking the anniversary of the death of Islamic Republic founder Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, saying that he was 100% against the idea of "we can," a famous slogan of Khomeini. Uranium enrichment is the key to our nuclear program, he says, and the enemies have focused on the enrichment. The rude and arrogant leaders of America repeatedly demand that we should not have a nuclear program. Who are you to decide Iran should have enrichment? Khamenei was speaking days after President Trump insisted Iran would have to halt its uranium enrichment. We'll segue into South Korea now, where Lee Jae-myung has officially been sworn in as the country's new president, bringing an end to a turbulent chapter in the nation's politics, marked by the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol after his controversial bid to impose martial law. During his inauguration speech at Seoul's National Assembly building, President Lee told the audience he would never again allow democratic institutions be threatened, vowing to unite the people. The candidates of the Democratic Party of Korea won South Korea's 21st presidential election with 49.2% of vote, defeating opposition People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-so, who secured 41.15%. Lee has said he wants to build relations with China and reopen dialogue with the DPRK while maintaining a strong security alliance with the United States. There are 44.4 million eligible voters, and election turnout was believed to be over 70% for this election. Two Chinese nationals have been accused of smuggling a fungus into the U.S. that officials describe as a dangerous biological pathogen. 33-year-old Yu Cheng-jian and 34-year-old Zhu Yongliu have been charged with conspiracy, smuggling goods, false statements, and visa fraud, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan. The complaint alleges Mr. Liu tried to smuggle the fungus through Detroit Airport so he could study it at a university in Michigan where his girlfriend, Ms. Jian, worked. The fungus, called Fusarium graminearum, can cause a disease in wheat, barley, maize, and rice that can wipe out crops and lead to vomiting and liver damage if it gets into food. The fungus is described in scientific literature as a potential agroterrorism weapon, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office, adding it is responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year. Back to the United States, Vice President JD Vance has slammed members of the Biden administration as complete morons for ignoring global supply chain risks and defending Trump's move to block foreign admissions into Harvard. Vance was making the rebuke while speaking at the American Compass 5th Anniversary Gala in D.C. on Tuesday. In a lighter moment, he jokingly called American Compass founder Oren Cass an asshole, after Cass introduced him by referencing his previous writing for National Review, a conservative publication often critical of Trump and his circle. Vance also took aim at elite universities, particularly Harvard, accusing them of using explicitly racist criteria in funding and training scientists.
You were writing for National Review.
Nobody in the prior government had actually asked these very fundamental questions. And so what is so crazy about the hyper-globalized era is that you had these basic questions about the brittleness of our supply chains that were completely uninvestigated by the very people who supported globalizing those supply chains. We were actually governed by complete morons, and we didn't even realize it until the Trump administration started to get underneath the hood of our government. What I really don't need to happen is I can't let Harvard have such an explicitly racist and in violation of the Civil Rights Act approach to how it funds and trains scientists that the best and the brightest are being cut out of that process altogether. So these things are very much connected. But I mean, look, I am not anti-university. I'm not anti-Harvard. What I am is a person who recognizes what should be obvious to every single person at every elite university in the country, which is the model is broken, it doesn't work, and they're violating the social contract they have with the people of the country, and the people are now saying, we need you to change. And these institutions are really going to be confronted, and thanks to President Trump, have already been confronted with a choice. You can accept democratic accountability and you can reform, or you can accept that the government is not going to treat you kindly, we're not going to fund your garbage, and we're not going to support you unless you do the job the American people need you to do. And my guess is that at least 90% and probably 95% of them voted for Kamala Harris, right? Very brilliant Kamala Harris, of course. But you know, if you ask yourself a foreign election, a foreign country's election, and you say 80% of the people voted for one candidate, you would say, oh, that's kind of weird, right? That's like not a super healthy democracy. If you said, oh, 95% of people voted for one party's candidate, you would say that's North Korea. Right, that's totalitarian. That is impossible in a true place of free exchange for that to happen. And so I think the ideological diversity of these universities has to get much better. And I think that if that got better, if you actually had a place where people were open to debating these things and weren't terrified they were going to lose their job for saying something that was a little bit outside the Overton window, then I think the science would get better, the reproducibility would get better, the quality of the institution would be so much better. And that's what I want, because we need high-quality universities. Right now, the problem is we don't have them.
Thank you, sir. Please join me in thanking JD Vance.
Thank you all
for everything you're doing.
Back to diplomatic relations, U.S. President Donald Trump and the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz are meeting in Washington this week. It'll be the first time the two leaders are meeting face-to-face and the first official trip to the U.S. for the Chancellor. Here with more details is Deutsche Welle's correspondent Emily Leshner. She's in Berlin. Emily, what topics are going to be on the table at the meeting?
There are three central topics of discussion. The first is the war in Ukraine, of course. Trump told Merz during a phone conversation a few weeks ago that he supports European efforts to bring an end to the conflict. So there will certainly be talk of how to do this, or at the very least, how to get Russia to agree to an unconditional ceasefire. Then there is the issue of trade. The 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum just went into effect. And if Europe and the White House can't agree on a deal by July 9th, then Europe will see 50% tariffs on all other imports coming into the U.S. Germany is facing a recession. Its manufacturing sector, particularly the auto sector, isn't doing well. So Merz has a big incentive to find a solution by this new deadline. And the other item of discussion at the meeting is going to be how to calm growing tensions in the Middle East.
But he hasn't been in office for long. I think he's only been a chancellor for over a month. Does he have enough of a relationship with Trump to sway the needle on any of these issues and with other European leaders who have not been able to?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the fact that Merz doesn't have much of a history with Trump yet may work to his advantage right now. At the moment, Trump and Merz at least appear to have gotten off on the right foot. Merz is staying at the official guest house of the White House. That's considered an honor. German media is even reporting that Trump and Merz are on a first-name basis. So maybe I should say Donald and Friedrich. and that they've even swapped cell phone numbers. There will be a luncheon. There will be a press conference as well. So there's the optics right now are that they are getting along. And Mance has made foreign policy a major focus so far, and he seems to be positioning himself as an important broker between the White House and Europe, similar to what we have seen with French President Emmanuel Macron and Trump. But Mance and Trump don't always see eye to eye. Trump wants NATO members, for example, like Germany, to increase their financial contributions to 5% of their GDP to the organization. This is something that Mance insisted during his election campaign that Germany wouldn't do, even though now he seems to have come around to the idea through a proposal that's being drafted by NATO's head, Mark Rutte. So Trump might take this as a sign that Mance is willing to negotiate and come around to his side. That may help Mance in the future. But we also may see some friction when the finer points of this proposal are being discussed. And when it comes to ending the trade war as well. So not everything is harmonious, even though right now it does seem that they are getting along.
Indeed. One final question, Emily. Are there more points of friction between Berlin and Washington?
There has been some tension, particularly between Berlin and some of the members of Trump's administration. For example, Trump's Vice President JD Vance, as well as his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They criticized Germany for labeling one of its political parties, the AfD, or Alternative for Deutschland, as a right-wing extremist organization. And to that criticism, Mance responded by essentially saying that the White House shouldn't preoccupy itself with domestic German politics. Mance also scolded Vance for what he called overreach when Vance said that Europe was threatening democracy, though there certainly has been some tension between Berlin and Washington so far.
I can imagine. Thanks again, Emily, for the updates. Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU, has released a video it claims shows an explosion on water, which the organization claims was at the Crimea Bridge on Tuesday. It's not possible to independently verify the authenticity of this video, but the SBU reports that the operation had taken several months to plan and alleged that it severely damaged underwater supports, causing the bridge to be in a state of emergency. However, video footage from the bridge at the time of publication showed traffic continuing to move across the structure. Russian Transport Ministry confirmed that traffic on the bridge was halted temporarily on 2 occasions with no major disruptions. The Kremlin denies that the bridge was ever hit. Politics in the Netherlands. So the Dutch government has collapsed after Geert Wilders withdrew his far-right party from the governing coalition following a row over migration. Prime Minister Dick Schoof confirmed he was stepping down on Tuesday and offered the resignation of the cabinet. King Willem-Alexander in a televised remark following an emergency cabinet meeting. Schoof said Wilders' decision to withdraw the support of his PVV party was irresponsible and unnecessary. The governing coalition was in place for just less than a year. Meanwhile, the Canadian government has proposed a bill to restrict some asylum claims and give authorities more power to halt the processing of immigration applications. Canada's Immigration Minister Lena Diab said the Strong Borders Act is meant to curb organized crime and the flow of illegal drugs and weapons while boosting the integrity of the country's immigration system. It includes provisions that would give police more power to monitor Canada's shared border with the U.S. It could also bar those who have been in Canada for more than a year from filing a claim for asylum. But critics say the bill, which seeks to expand authorities' ability to open and inspect mail, would breach civil liberties. We're on to another break now on The World Today. Still ahead. Doctors in Colombia have used Botox to save the life of a fetus. We'll hear this amazing story after. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Saudi authorities have continued to heighten preparations across sectors to ensure a hitch-free 2025 Hajj exercise. From security and safety, health and rapid response, teams have been prepped and deployed to tackle any threats that may occur, as authorities have introduced a drone to tackle firefighting and rescue for the first time. As part of a multi-layered security approach, 40,000 personnel have also been deployed to control crowd, manage traffic, as well as ensure rapid response and surveillance. Authorities revealed that over 250,000 illegal pilgrims have been evicted, 415 fake Hajj offices busted, and 109,632 vehicles violating Hajj rules have been sent back. Our correspondent Halima Guillaume has more.
Preparations for Hajj 2025 are in top gear across various sectors in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as authorities prepare for a smooth exercise, having drawn lessons from previous ones. The Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, in collaboration with the Council of Senior Scholars and the King Abdulaziz Foundation for Research and Archives, organized this Grand Hajj Symposium in Jeddah. The symposium is part of the ministry's efforts to highlight the concept of capacity in Islamic Sharia as it aims to uphold the objectives of Islamic law. The 2025 Grand Hajj Symposium, which is the 49th edition, featured the participation of ministers, senior scholars, and heads of Hajj offices and missions, including Nigeria, as well as specialists from within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and abroad. Not just showcasing diverse scholarly and intellectual experiences, it examined one of the key concepts of contemporary Hajj jurisprudence, fostering knowledge exchange in support of pilgrims. The Interior Ministry holds this press conference for commanders of the Saudi security forces in Mecca, giving details of preparations as well as technological innovations adopted. The General Directorate of Saudi Civil Defense announced that for the first time, a firefighting and response drone will be used for this year's Hajj. Named Falcon and enhanced with artificial intelligence, the drone has a flight time of 12 hours and can carry a payload of 40 kilograms and prepped to be used in hard-to-access locations. The National Center for Security Operations 911 is set up with more personnel to monitor the security situation and coordinate with security entities to handle emergency situations.
Expect the calls for this year. Depends on the numbers. We increased our forces in the call takers hall, so we can answer all the calls in the same quality we do all the year. We also enhanced the role of the CCTV camera hall. We monitor all of the holy sites.
This year, response time has also been reduced with the adoption of sophisticated infrastructure.
We answer all the calls in less than 2 seconds. As soon as we get a call, 3 main informations show up on the system: the name of the caller, the number of the caller, and the location. After that, if there was a report, we will send it to the specialized entity in less than 45 seconds.
Not just security and safety, authorities have mobilized personnel at the Health Emergency Operations Center in Mina.
Public Health Authority, Saudi Red Crescent Authority, NUPCO, and the providers. So having live information, helping decision maker to reach the proper answer, proper question, and proper service at the same time.
With a call to pilgrims to take procedures to manage heat wave emphasized, there is a reduction in medication delivery time.
As a physician and as an emergency physician at this time, be careful of heat-related illnesses. All Hajjis try their best to rest when they can rest.
As over 1.4 million people have arrived the Holy Land to perform Hajj, authorities are staying proactive. They reveal that over 250,000 illegal pilgrims have been evicted, about 400 fake Hajj offices busted, and no fewer than 109,000 vehicles violating Hajj rules sent back. From Mecca, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
We have Halima joining us now from Makkah. Halima, this is an experience that every Muslim is expected to have at least once in their lifetime, to my understanding. How does it feel this year?
Thank you very much, Amarachi. This year it feels more comfortable, more and easier, and also there's an improved sense of safety. More comfortable and easier because the third expansion of the Grand Mosque, the Masjidul Haram, has been opened to worshippers. There is more prayer areas, there's more walkways, there's more restrooms. Ablution areas has also been increased to 12,000 from a little over 2,000. Also, the climate control has also been upgraded as cooling capacity has been increased from 39,000 to 199,000 refrigeration tons. This is as well as other improved amenities across infrastructure introduced by the government to ensure that pilgrims this year have a comfortable and safer experience.
You can imagine, Halima. Let's talk about the security measures being put in place for this year's Hajj and why that is necessary. Saudi Arabia claims to be one of the safest countries in the world. Why do they need these security measures?
Pilgrims, Amarachi, as pilgrims prepare for Hajj, authorities have upped measures across security, safety, health, transportation and logistics, all to ensure that pilgrims this year have a more comfortable and safer experience.
And do talk to us about the measures to safeguard health and other amenities for those pilgrims who will be in Saudi this season.
Well, Amarachi, they need these measures because for the Saudi government, the safety of pilgrims is priority, especially with the very hot weather conditions and the presence of large crowds. The Saudi security officials say that Hajj security is a red line, which means that the safety of pilgrims and holy sites cannot be compromised. This year it has introduced a lot of advanced technology to ensure that there is safety. The 911 emergency center, the call takers there have been increased from the previous number, and this has ensured that call takers can respond to emergencies in less than 2 seconds. Also, the Saudi government this year for the first time is introducing a drone for firefighting and rescue operation. The drone is named Falcon, and it has a 12 hours flight time and can take a payload of 40 kilograms. So this multi-layered approach by the government just to ensure that pilgrims feel safer and more comfortable than the previous year.
Thanks, Halima, and sorry for interrupting you there. But I know that lots of Nigerians are there, in observing the Hajj this time. But this weekend is also another Salah holiday. What's the message from the Saudi authorities to many of the pilgrims who will be attending the Hajj?
The Saudi health authorities this year have come together and set up an emergency operations center in Mina. And then personnel have been increased also to respond to health emergencies. The health authorities are also adopting technology too, as well as the security personnel. This year, they are using drones to deliver medication, which will reduce medication delivery time from 1 hour 20 minutes to just 6 minutes. There are also other measures to ensure that the weather conditions are not very strict for pilgrims.
Again, Halima, appreciate your reporting on this. And I know you're also observing the Hajj. Thanks again for bringing us up to speed on the security awareness in Saudi Arabia. Now, back here in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu has authorized the immediate release of 2 billion naira to immediately commence reconstruction of all houses affected in Mokwa, Niger State. The Vice President has also said the President has authorized the immediate release of 20 trucks of rice to be delivered to the victims. Meanwhile, the Niger State government says a total of 1,354 people were directly affected by the flood disaster, 4,534 individuals displaced from their homes, with 458 households impacted. More figures coming. A total of 265 buildings have been destroyed and severely damaged. 2 major roads washed away. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, is on the ground with an update. I do apologize, we cannot bring you Emperor Simon's report. But as we end the program, Maya Victoria's life became a milestone in medicine, even before she was born. It's after doctors from Clínica General del Norte Hospital in Barranquilla successfully performed the first intrauterine fetal surgery to correct gastrocysts in an issue with the abdominal wall using botulinum toxin, commonly known as Botox. This successful surgery represents a revolutionary advance that opens up new possibilities for the prenatal treatment of complex congenital anomalies with tangible benefits for fetal health. During the procedure, the medical team implemented a unique method for the first time in history: the application of botulinum toxin to the fetal abdominal wall to relax the muscles and facilitate the return of the organs to the interior. The surgery's costs were covered by the public health system in Colombia, which facilitates access to this cutting-edge technology for pregnant women, regardless of their socio-economic status. It makes Colombia one of the few countries in the world where fetal surgery of this complexity can be performed within the public health system. We'll continue bringing you those medical breakthroughs here on The World Today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi.